amendment to Chapter 304 in the zoning of the Code of the Borough of Churchill, which really is to define distribution center and to authorize such use only in C1 and C2 commercial districts in the borough as conditional use. I generally, at this point, whenever we're dealing with ordinance level issues, defer to the guy that we pay for these things to give a little clearer understanding. So I'll stop for a quick second, let Gavin point out if I've missed anything, our solicitor, and then we can move forward through the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the public hearing tonight is a requirement of the municipality's planning code. Anytime the borough is going to amend its ordinance, part of that process includes not only sending a copy to the Allegheny County Department of Planning and also the borough's own planning commission for review and comment, but also an opportunity for the residents and taxpayers of the borough to comment at a public hearing prior to council being able to enact the text amendment. So you did a good job of describing what's in front of council tonight. The planning commission did meet prior to this meeting last month. They met, heard public comment, and did vote to recommend approval of this particular zoning amendment. That vote is not binding. They're an advisory or a recommending body. That is just for sort of the benefit of council to know that an additional body has reviewed and heard the presentation, heard comments from the public at that meeting, and did vote 2-0 to recommend approval of this ordinance. So the way it'll work tonight, Mr. President, as you well know, is that each resident or taxpayer who would like to speak about the amendment will have 3 minutes. I believe Mr. Graziani is going to be the timekeeper this evening. We'll want to make sure, and this is very important. I'm getting some feedback.
I'm going to ask, I've got some unmuted folks. I don't want to have to mute everyone, but I'm going to need you to mute yourself now, because if you don't, then you're going to pop up on our screens and interrupt the solicitor while speaking. So if everyone can please mute your phones or computers so that the solicitor can continue. And then upon public comment, I will call you, at which time you can unmute yourself. Continue, Mr. Solicitor.
Thank you, Mr. President. What I was getting to was one of the most important things during the public comment period is to please make sure that you clearly state your name, spell your last name for the record, and give us your street address, your home address, so that we can make sure that the minutes are clear and we get everyone's name and identified as a resident or taxpayer of the borough. Mr. Graziani, I think hopefully you're unmuted, but can you confirm that we did in fact provide the necessary public notice prior to this public hearing, the advertisements in the newspaper?
Yes, sir, with your help. We did advertise properly. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So, Mr. Dwarn, I think with those housekeeping items, unless there are questions from members of council, let me step back because this is an amendment that's requested by a property owner or a property owner under the municipality's planning code. What we'll do at this time is we will allow the applicant to make a presentation prior to the public commenting, and hopefully, some of the public questions or comments will be answered during that presentation. I'd remind the public also that this is not a cross-examination session or a time to. You can certainly pose your comments in the form of questions, but there won't be a back and forth. There will just be your 3 minutes of time to make your comments and questions. We will provide an opportunity after all the public comments are done for the applicant to attempt to sort of wrap things up and answer some of the questions that may be out there, as long as that's okay from council. Council, at any point, you do have the option, if you have questions, at the appropriate time, we can certainly have you be able to pose those to the applicant to try to get those answered. So with that said, Mr. President, I would recommend at this point we give the applicant an opportunity to make their presentation, to be followed by the public comment session.
Yeah, we will do so. I would just point out to members of council in particular, as we head into public comment, in particular, that the public, as they're commenting, we will not engage in a back and forth with the public comment, so that the public is able to as many as we can, obviously all of them, are able to give their comments. I will reserve time, not only in terms of if you have questions for the applicant, but I will reserve time as always at the end of the workshop should you want to make specific comments about the public or any other comment. As you know how we generally do this in a business meeting, we'll do the same in workshop this time, given the space that we're in. Having said that, I will turn it over now to the applicant, and then after that, we'll head into the actual public comment from residents and taxpayers. So the floor is yours, I believe, Hillwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Leif Metz. I'm a real estate attorney at Buchanan, Ingersoll, and Rooney here in Pittsburgh. And we're happy to be here presenting and appreciate the opportunity from council and the borough manager and the solicitor to be here. And also appreciate all the residents who are tuning in on Zoom to join us, and look forward to hearing your thoughtful questions. So we've been working with the borough for about 1.5 years on this potential project. And as Mr. Dworin mentioned, the idea is to redevelop the former Westinghouse site for a logistics facility. And so the text amendment that is before council would make a warehouse and distribution facility a conditional use in the C1 zoning district. So the Westinghouse property is in the C1 district. And one question we've gotten a few times from residents is, what would it mean if the borough were to approve the text amendment? Is there further process after that? Is there further oversight from the borough? Or after that, does the developer just go on and build their building? And so I thought it might be helpful just to explain that with the conditional use, there's still a quite significant amount of further oversight that the borough has over the project. So if council were to adopt this amendment, Hillwood would then need to submit a conditional use application to the borough. And in the borough's zoning code, there are a number of criteria that Hillwood would have to satisfy in order for their conditional use application to be granted. And so, for example, the borough has further oversight over traffic and sound and light and pollution and stormwater to ensure that that the residents in the borough are being adequately protected in the development process. And we have a big head start on those matters. We've been working carefully with the borough over the last 1.5 years, and the developer to date has spent over $500,000 on due diligence studies to address those same matters. And so we've gotten some preliminary feedback just earlier today from the borough on some of those studies, and we'll be talking about those in greater detail later. But I just thought it might be helpful to frame the discussion to give the structure that this is the first step in the process and not the last step. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tim Pudwell, who is the project manager at Hillwood, who will start running us through our presentation.
Thanks, Leif. Thanks, Leif. Good evening, everyone. Excuse me. I want to start by saying we're very appreciative of your time today and excited to talk to you about the potential redevelopment of the former Westinghouse Research and Development Facility. Alex, if you can go to the next slide, please. I want to start off by giving a little bit about the Hillwood team and our local consultants that are dedicated to this project. It all starts with our leadership, which is Gary Frederick and Michael Alderman. These guys have a combined 40 years of commercial real estate experience, and Gary in particular has been working in the Northeast since 2002. As development director, I lead the day-to-day efforts for the development team. I come with over 15 years of construction and development experience, with the last 6 years focusing on logistics development throughout the Midwest and the Northeast. Most recently working on our 1 million square foot development in Finley Township that completed in August of this year. Our construction services team is led by Jim Whitehead. Alongside with him is Dwight Lewis, who manages the pre-construction for the Northeast. And additionally, we've hired Langen Engineering for traffic, site, and environmental engineering services, along with, as you all know, Leif Metz from Buchanan, Ingersoll. If you can go to the next slide, Alex. So we've been working on this development for approximately 1.5 years now. And throughout this time, we've been reaching out to local experts to find out what's important to them and gain their support for the project. To date, we've received positive feedback from everyone on this list, in particular, a great deal of support from Governor Wolf, Senator Jay Costa, Allegheny County Executive Rich Fitzgerald, and Allegheny County Economic Development Director Lance Chimka. We've also spent a lot of time informing leadership at the Woodland Hills School District, Black Ridge Civic Association, the Port Authority, and PennDOT about the project. If you can go to the next slide. So what we're here tonight to talk about is the opportunity located within the Churchill Borough at the former Westinghouse facility. If you can go to the next one, Alex. This site is approximately 133 acres and it's large enough to accommodate the proposed multi-story, 800,000 square foot distribution facility. Why we see the site as ideally suited for e-commerce is due to its prime highway access, proximity to a large consumer base, as well as a large labor pool. Hillwood's commitment to a project like this one requires a large investment that only certain types of development can absorb. We're anticipating a $300 million in overall project costs, which is a conservative figure at this stage. This site will require $40 to $50 million in upfront costs, which reflects a combination of the purchase price and an extensive amount of remediation and demolition efforts needed to make the site developable. There will also be a large investment in the current infrastructure surrounding the site by means of traffic improvements, which Chris Prisk from Langen will dive deeper into a little bit later in the presentation. Additionally, with this development comes community benefit, starting with 1,000 to 1,500 jobs, which 5% will be technical and managerial positions. At a minimum, provide starting wages in the mid to high teens with full benefits packages day one, along with an educational reimbursement program available to all employees. And then last and certainly not least, there will also be a considerable increase in tax base, which Leif will expand on later in the presentation. Here we got the former Westinghouse site, which has been dormant for nearly 20 years, is considered an environmentally challenged site based on the previous operations and the current conditions. If you go to the next one, Alex. This is the proposed site plan for the facility. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Westbrook from Langen to give an overview on the site and some of the key points of the redevelopment.
Thanks, Tim. So the site layout that's shown right now on the screen shows the approximately 823,000 square foot building with the employee entrance, the main entrance off the north side of the building, or the facing the top of the page towards the Parkway East. The employee parking lot is on the north side of the building, and a circulation driveway, which will be a public road, will connect a new off-ramp from the highway to both Beulah Road and Greensburg Pike. The site, as Tim was mentioning, has it's a rather hilly site compared to some sites that we look at, which is certainly a challenge, but we've worked with the tenants to come up with an approach for how to handle that within the tolerances that they allow for their facilities, for their vehicles. And we're in the process of applying for the NPDES permit and the Chapter 105 permit to the Conservation District and the DEP as part of the stormwater design that we're currently in the process of performing. Should this continue to move forward, we have had conversations with them just to confirm that the approach that we're taking is suitable to their requirements. And also, a new driveway is being coordinated with Westinghouse. You can see on the aerial to the bottom of the page or south, and they have requested that they've asked for a connection that they can control to their site to reach their site once the site is redeveloped. Tim, do you want to take the next slide?
Sure, thanks, Chris. So what this slide here is shown is just a zoomed in view of the northwest quadrant at the site. One item to highlight that Chris touched on is that we're proposing a new slip ramp off Greensburg Pike that will add direct access into the site, coming off of 376. One of the key benefits with this direct access is by coming directly off the highway and right into the site, it keeps the traffic for the Amazon employees off the local roads. So it's a traffic mitigation effort. If you can go to the next slide, Alex. And this slide here is just to give a little perspective of the same view of the northwest quadrant, what it looks like now when you're looking in from the parkway and what it's going to look like down the line when we complete the facility. With this redevelopment comes a full landscape package that will really beautify the site from its current condition that it's in today. And one other thing I'd like to highlight with this view is when looking at the current site, you see that the building is very prominent from the parkway. When you're looking at our rendering, you'll notice with the landscape and the way that the building sits on the site, it's very low. So you really don't see much of the building at all from a zoomed out perspective. Alex, if you can go to the next slide, please. Again, this is just another zoomed in view of the northeast quadrant of the site. Chris Prisk will talk about this a little bit more, but if you look in the upper right-hand corner at Beulah and William Penn, we're proposing to put in a dual lane roundabout as another traffic mitigation effort. And like I said, Chris will touch on that a little bit deeper later in the presentation. If you can go to the next one. Again, just another before and after view, just try and give an idea, give everybody a little perspective on what it currently looks like and what we're proposing to do from a landscape beautification effort. So this slide here is our anticipated project schedule. When looking at the anticipated project schedule for this development, we're looking at a Q1 of 21 start for remediation and development and demolition of the existing site, which is an 8 to 10 month process. And then we're looking at Q1 of 22 for site and building construction activities with an anticipated build duration of 15 months and a Q3 of 22 start for the offsite improvements with an anticipated occupancy of Q3 of 23, somewhere within that August and September timeline of 2023. And then I'm gonna flip it back over to Leif, and Leif's gonna talk about some of the studies we've done to date.
Thank you, Tim. We thought it might be helpful to give a little bit more detail on some of the studies that we've performed to date. That's another question that we've gotten from a number of residents who understandably want to have a bit more visibility into what studies we've done and what they have shown. And so I'm just going to do these in kind of chronological order. The first two studies that we submitted to the borough were in October of 2019, and that was a sound study and a lighting study. And just to start with the sound study, one question that we sometimes get is, if I live nearby, am I going to hear the sound of trucks beeping when they back up and that sort of thing? Is this going to be irritating to me? And so the sound study that we submitted was done by an acoustical engineer. And so what they suggested was that right now the borough's zoning code doesn't have a specific noise limitation that would apply to this site. So our sound engineers suggested that in other municipalities where they've done work, that 55 decibels at neighboring property lines is a common standard. And just to give some perspective, 50 decibels is the sound of rain falling, and 60 decibels is the volume of a normal conversation. So 55 is somewhere between the sound of rain and the sound of a normal conversation, so it's pretty quiet. And the way that level of sound would be attained is on the northern side of the site, which is toward the parkway, and on the southern side of the site, which is like a hill. That sound mitigation is provided just by the topography. And on the eastern side of the site by Beulah Road, where there are a number of residences along Beulah, there would be an aesthetically, pleasing sound wall that would be 15 feet high, and that would protect residents on the eastern side from sound coming from the facility. And on the western side, on the Greensburg Pike side, there would also be sound walls that vary on location between 5 feet tall and 15 feet tall. So that's the proposal that Hillwood made to the borough in its initial sound study, was to comply with a typical standard of 55 decibels of sound at the property line. The lighting study that we submitted last October indicated that Hillwood will comply with the borough's lighting requirements, and those are that light from any property cannot be stronger at the property line than 0.25 foot candles is the standard. And a foot candle is sort of what it sounds like. It's the brightness of a candle 1 foot away from you. So 0.25 foot candles is 1/4 of that brightness. So it's in fact quite dim. And so our lighting study also showed how some of the shielding would work so that the light is directed toward the building and the parts that need to be well lit for safety and operations, and how it's shielded from the neighboring residents. Another study that we submitted was an economic impact study, which was this past February. And among other things, it showed that the number of construction jobs, the direct construction jobs, would be approximately 1,400. And that there would be a further 700 indirect and induced construction jobs. So altogether, there are about 2,000 jobs that come out of this during the construction period. We also submitted an air quality protocol, it's called. So we can't measure the air quality yet because we haven't built the building yet. But what that protocol was indicating was the types of ongoing air quality measurements and controls that will be put in place when the building is developed. In April of this year, we submitted a stormwater study. And so one of the requirements for stormwater is that no more stormwater runoff can leave the site post-construction than does today. And so we certainly will adhere to that. The stormwater process, and we know that that there have been some flooding issues in the borough, and so we're keenly aware of those and are going to do our part to help mitigate those. So stormwater gets regulated by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, and also by the borough that has its own stormwater management ordinance. So we'll comply with all of the state and all of the borough requirements on stormwater. And in the initial review that the borough's engineers did of our stormwater management submission, they said, yes, we think that the design that Hillwood has submitted is adequate. And they noted that, of course, the further review will be needed as we get into more detailed drawings during construction. But in general, their view was that it was appropriate. Another study that we submitted was a home value study, because one concern that has been raised is, would the presence of a significant logistics facility like this, would it reduce property values for the residents? And so the study that we submitted was prepared by a Pennsylvania licensed appraiser, and they did a study of 5 other significant logistics facilities in Pennsylvania in 4 different counties. And the way that they tried to measure the effect was after construction of a new logistics facility, they measured the change in home values, pardon me, within a 1 mile radius and also within a 2 mile radius around that new facility. And they compared that pattern of increase in values with the pattern of increase in values in the county as a whole. And what they found was that for each of those 5 sites, that the increase in property values close, both within 1 mile and within 2 miles of the facility, properties values increased more quickly than they did in the county as a whole. And so what that indicates is that rather than decreasing home values, the presence of the facility actually increased home values, which from the developer's point of view makes sense because you have more jobs and more investment, and so you have more potential home buyers, which would increase home values. And the last study that I wanted to briefly mention, and Chris Prisk, our traffic engineer, will talk about this in more detail later, but is traffic. And we certainly understand that traffic is a concern of the elected officials and of the residents in Churchill, and we take it very seriously. And the off-site traffic mitigation measures that Tim Pudwell mentioned, the slip ramp from the Parkway and also the proposed roundabout, those are both quite expensive improvements. And so they're undertaken for the specific purpose of mitigating traffic that would be generated by the site. And so the traffic study process was started a year ago in November of 2019. And so just to present to the public the level of seriousness that both the developer and the borough have paid to this issue. So to date, there have been 5 different meetings that involved PennDOT and the developer and the borough engineers and county representatives. And so far, Hillwood has made 10 different traffic submissions with an 11th forthcoming. And so the way that process works is that with PennDOT's guidance and the borough's review and approval as well, the developer has to indicate all the different intersections that it plans to study so that it can measure what the traffic impact will be. And then all the parties also have to agree on how they're going to measure both the current traffic that's generated and the future traffic that is anticipated. And so there's a lot of data and a lot of assumptions and agreements that have to be reached by the parties that form the basis of the traffic study. So we submitted the initial traffic study and also a revision to the traffic study, and we're now preparing a second revision to it after having previously agreed on the scope and agreed on the method of determining how much traffic would be generated and what direction it will be traveling. So just to sum that up, there have been 5 kind of all hands meetings and 10 submissions going on 11. So everyone is paying very serious attention to traffic to make sure that we get it right. So those are the studies that we've done to date. And as I mentioned earlier, the developer so far has spent about $500,000 on those studies. And the borough's engineers at Gateway, who I know are on the call and certainly can speak for themselves, they just submitted some preliminary review commentary to the studies. And so one thing that they appropriately noted was that these studies will be supplemented with meaningful additional detail once we get into design and construction documents for the project. So, so the Gateway has correctly pointed out that there will be further review and further oversight regarding these studies, but we have a quite significant head start compared to where the due diligence review of a project like this would typically be at this stage. And that's something that at Hillwood we feel good about, and that we also commend the borough's elected officials for monitoring this and having us do those studies up front so that they had as clear a picture as they could of what the development will look like and what the impact on the community will be. Thanks, Tim. I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Leif. Alex, if you want to go to the next slide. So what Leif just touched on is exactly what this slide represents. This is highlights 3 of the towns that we've recently done development in, Kutztown, PA, Manchester, and Carlisle. And this graph illustrates what Leif mentioned on the positive effect that these developments have had within the communities surrounding the development. If we want to go to the next one, Alex. All right, I'm gonna flip it over to Chris Prisk, and Chris is going to talk about our traffic improvement plan that he's been working on.
Thanks, Tim. Forgive me if I'm a little slurred of speech today. I just had some dental work and don't have feeling yet in this side. So know that I'm with you, but I'm trying my best here. So on this slide, the two things that we really wanted to touch on is the off-site improvements and the new direct connection off-ramp from eastbound into the site. The huge benefit of that is it eliminates the need for incoming traffic to use Greensburg Pike from the Parkway. That would come directly onto the site. One thing to note is that PennDOT has made clear that that connection, as well as the road that continues to parallel the Parkway all the way to Beulah, would be a public road. So that off-ramp connection all the way over to Beulah would be a public road. That direct connection, though, like I said, does take away traffic from going on to Greensburg Pike. The other big improvement that's been identified and proposed is a dual lane roundabout at William Penn and Beulah. This intersection, as everyone's aware of, is congested during the peak hours. And so one of the things that was identified was, how do we, one, address that existing problem, and then two, address proposed traffic from our development. And so we're proceeding ahead with this dual lane roundabout, which, as I said before, could be a nice feather in the cap of Churchill Borough, because this would be the first dual lane roundabout in District 11. And so I know that the PennDOT staff is excited about this, but obviously doing their due diligence. A few things that Leif touched on that I just want to further emphasize is, this traffic study has been thoroughly vetted. As he mentioned, to the number of meetings and number of submissions, it's been reviewed by PennDOT, Allegheny County, and Churchill Borough. We've had 3 or 4 different rounds of comments on the preliminary submission. That's just to get the inputs for the traffic study. And then we've submitted twice the full traffic study. This slide that's up here now is the various intersections that we looked at. So all of the intersections that lead to the on and off ramps for the interstate, they were all part of our traffic study. So we did address all those on-off ramps. Traffic is a comparative study by nature. So you collect traffic volumes, you analyze the intersection operations, and you grade it, similar to a grading scale in school. So you'll hear the term like level of service. So level of service A, B, C, D, E, F. That's how you grade how intersections are operating. And so we do that for existing conditions, and then we do that for what's called a no-build scenario. So in the future, a year or two, when this development is supposed to be built, what would those conditions be like then? So that accounts for growth in the area. And then we project the traffic from the new development through these study area intersections, and then do the same grading system and compare back. And if you add more than 10 seconds of delay to a certain movement, or an overall intersection together, you need to mitigate that. And I think from the last meeting, there was some concern about the word mitigate. We didn't like the word mitigate. I'm just using the technical term. I'm not saying I'm a fan of it either. But you need to, address, if you will, this increase in delay. And what our study has shown is, with the proposed improvements that we're setting forth, we're able to mitigate all of the traffic impacts. So we're able to get any of those areas where we're above 10 seconds of delay to a movement, we're able to address that. So the study, from an analysis standpoint, says these improvements will work and address traffic concerns. One of the reasons that there's been a few more reviews than maybe typical is really relating to the design of these improvements. Because they're a little bit more complex than your average add a driveway, put up a traffic signal, there's been a lot more back and forth on the design elements. And so that's really where we're kind of going back and forth on is, can we construct these offsite improvements so that it reflects the analysis that everyone has already agreed will work to address traffic concerns. Some other key items that I want to touch on is, there are a few different facility types for this end user. One facility type is primarily known for the delivery vans that drop off packages to your front door. So that facility type has a lot more delivery van activity. There's another facility type that is known for the amount of tractor trailer trucks. And then there's a third facility type, which is this facility, which is primarily known for employee traffic because of the amount of jobs and stuff that it creates. Now, there is truck traffic with this facility. I want to be clear of that, but proportionally, it's less than 5% of the total amount of peak hour traffic that it generates. So that's why I say it's primarily known for employee vehicles heading to work, but there are trucks that obviously have to service the facility. So I think I probably hit on most, and hopefully I didn't go too far, but I definitely answer any questions later on that comes up. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Chris. The next item is the potential impact of the facility on the revenues of the borough and the school district and the county. And right now, the assessed value for real estate tax purposes of this piece of property is under $1 million, around $900,000. And that's a result of the meaningful environmental contamination that's there, and the fact that it was, the property was sold at an auction by Westinghouse some years ago and has just sort of stalled since then. So right now, the property is producing virtually no tax revenue. And at one point, while it was owned by Westinghouse, it was a quite meaningful element of the borough and the school district's tax base. So the project is expected to be about a $300 million construction project. And so compared to the current assessment of under $1 million, the tax revenue that's generated by the facility is going to be very substantially increased. And that's an element of the project that we're proud of, to be able to contribute to the local governments and the school in that way. Can we have the next slide, please?
I got it.
Here.
Good evening. My name is Gary Frederick. I'm the Northeast market leader for Hillwood, and I wanted to spend a few minutes with you tonight to talk about what this means to the community and maybe a little bit of background on our company. But I think it's most important to talk about how Hillwood finds its way to these communities and what's life like with Hillwood in your community, and this project and a new business in town. So the next slide. This just gives you a quick overview of the parts of the U.S. where Hillwood is active. As Tim mentioned, we've been active in Pennsylvania since 2002, on numerous projects, primarily in central and eastern Pennsylvania. we have a strong foothold in the e-commerce business. And so e-commerce has become a really big part of changes in our society and in the retail business. It's a fact of life that consumers are switching to e-commerce. The pandemic has probably accelerated that trend for obvious reasons. And we have, as a company, recognized that. Amazon is our biggest customer. We have about 40 Amazon projects under our belt. I'm currently responsible for about 6 Amazon projects in the Northeast. Let's go to the next slide. I think we touched on this, and we have a resume that we're really proud of in the Northeast. I think most recently and most direct impact on folks from a town like Churchill would be in Findlay Township. We just completed a $100 million plus project there that I think the community is very happy with. And it has a parking lot full of cars for and employment. We've gone through the construction phase. A good many local contractors have benefited from it, and we see this same economic boost on virtually all projects we do. Next slide, please. More of the same. We're not here to toot our horn. You know, I'd like to shift gears just for a second and say that, you know, when Hillwood, we're a privately held company by the Perot family. We have a outstanding track record across the country in exactly this type of development. And I just wanted to list out to you, as far as from a Hillwood's point of view, what's really important is the community and regional impact. We want to be able to come back to you and say, did Hillwood do what they said they were going to do? Is the impact what you expected? Did the community benefit from this project? So that's very important. We're very interested and very tuned in to the economic boost that occurs for this project. There's millions and millions of dollars that flow into the local community and into local households, into school districts and municipalities. And I'd say the last of our prime considerations is the mitigation of impact. There's that mitigation word again, but we don't want to jam a square peg into a round hole. We want this to fit. You know, I'd like to flip that. And so that's what I think is important to Hillwood. And I wanted to list a few things that I think are important to the community. This is a very challenging site for redevelopment. As Tim mentioned, it's going to take $40–50 million before you have anything, and very few projects can absorb that front end cost. Sure, there's going to be traffic. There's a very strong, well-vetted traffic impact analysis. And as far as industrial projects go, this project is very low on the spectrum for truck traffic and very high on the spectrum for car traffic. So that relates to the amount of employment that it creates. Then the next thing I'd list is this is a huge private investment. These are private investment dollars coming into the community. We're bringing a leading industry and an established company to town. As I mentioned, e-commerce is a huge wave of change through our society, and it's going to be on the side of the winners. I know many may differ with me, but e-commerce has really taken off, and it's going to be here to stay, and it's a good play for the community to be tied to a industry that's on an upward trajectory. It's part of our collective future, whether we like it or not. You know, and it's really our goal for the project to become a part of the fabric of the Eastern Greater Pittsburgh region, that this will be thought of as contributing to the community. And that's really the Hillwood story. You know, we can show you lots of pictures of big buildings that we've built and lots of numbers and maps, but this is really about how it affects the community, and we're very passionate about making a positive impact on the community. I've given this speech so many times that I'm paraphrasing some of it, so I think you can just flip to the rest of the slides, Alex.
This is Leif Metz. Just one last thing we wanted to add before we conclude. A real pleasure and privilege for me in working with Hillwood on this project has been watching them kind of put their money where their mouth is on their value of investing in communities and in making sure that the community feels good about the projects they develop there. One of the other things that the borough had asked us to do is to provide contact info for municipal managers and for elected officials and other municipalities where we've done projects, so that Churchill could reach out to their colleagues in other parts of the state and learn firsthand about their experience. And so we were pleased to do that. And one other thing that Hillwood is evaluating as the project moves forward is the possibility of investing in the community in other ways. And so some of the things that they're thinking about are, we know that right now the Allegheny Land Trust is very interested in purchasing the Churchill Valley Country Club site. And so that's something that Hillwood is considering helping the land trust with the funding to buy the country club site. And so that would provide some additional green space to offset perhaps some of what's right now thought of as green space on the Westinghouse site. Additionally, right now the park and ride for Port Authority bus service that's in the borough is at the intersection of Beulah Road and McCready Road, and so that intersection is going to be part of what is changed by the roundabout, and so we know that that park and ride needs to be moved. And right now that park and ride is kind of tough to use because you have to park in the church's lot, and then you have to cross the street, and it's a fairly dangerous street crossing to get to the other side where the bus shelter is. And so we've met with the church, and we'll continue to do so, and we're sensitive to the church's needs and their property, and we'll be respectful of that. But in addition, we're going to relocate and improve the park and ride. And one of the other things that's possible with that is to have some shuttle service between the park and ride and the facility, so that we're further reducing the number of cars that are traveling on the local roads. And there may also be some educational investment for opportunities for school kids who are in Churchill. So Hillwood is still, learning about the community and gauging what's important, and so we'll have further updates about that in the future. But when we say we want to invest in the community, we mean it, and we'll stand behind it. So we're very grateful for everyone's time, and Mr. Solicitor, we'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Metz. Do we have our council president to lead us into the public comment portion, if that is in fact where we're headed now?
That is in fact where we are headed. So first of all, thank you for the presentation. At this time, what we're going to do is open for public comment. What I would ask is that if you would like to comment, if you go in the participant space, if I'm still looking at the same boxes, you have the ability to raise your hand, at which time, if you click on that, I am able to select you, and then we can go through this. And so that being the case, it goes in order, and I will let you know that when I do select you, if you could please, again, as the solicitor said before, state your name, your street address, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. I would ask that you do keep it within that time frame. Obviously, there's a lot of us, and so I want to make sure that everybody who wants to speak has the opportunity to speak. And so in doing that, I also want to make sure that I am not here tomorrow morning still listening to comments. That being the case, we're going to begin at the...
Mr. Dorn, if I could, before you jump into public comment, I did want to mention another sort of housekeeping item here. There will be no vote on the ordinance tonight, just to make sure everyone's clear on that. There's been a special meeting that's advertised or will be advertised for 2 Mondays from tonight, November 16th. And that is the time when council will vote. This may or may not be a discussion item on November 9th. Next Monday, that's going to be up to council here. But I just wanted to clarify in case anyone was wondering when the action item would be up for a vote. Thanks.
Duly noted and appreciated, even if you are talking time. All right, so we will begin at the beginning here with Mr. Ken Balke. Ken, I need you to unmute.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. My name's Ken Balke, that's B-A-L-K-E-Y, and my wife and I are residents here on 2007 Hampstead Drive, and we've been residents here for 43 years. I'm a 42-year veteran of Westinghouse, and I worked at the R&D site twice during my career, and I still serve as an adjunct faculty member. I teach a graduate class in Pitt's Engineering School on safety standards. And my main comments are coming from me. I chair the tree committee for Churchill. And my comments are gonna be a follow-up to ones I made during the prior meeting last month. I had the chance, I have walked the entire perimeter on the east, south, and west side of the site to get a better handle how the building fits on the site against the tree population. And for my review, I noticed that the Hillwood, you're going to have to remove scores of trees on the east side of the site and on the south side. And my concern, I have 3 concerns associated with this tree removal. The primary one is primarily with the stormwater runoff. You have your stormwater basins you propose, but I believe they're inadequate for the amount of trees you're going to have to remove. You may need to be looking at a basin on the far southern side of the property itself. My biggest concerns are on the east side, up over Beulah Road. I mentioned during my comments last time that I was there when Hurricane Ivan hit, and I've seen the amount of water that can pour off that and be very hazardous to people below it, both the homes and people on the road. And you're removing trees, not just for the site, but you're removing them for the new driveway to get into Westinghouse, and also your roundabout is going to need to move a number of trees as well there, and all of them hold water during a storm, and without them you have much more. Your new trees will not affect it. I appreciate you putting new trees in, but they're not going to take care of the concern that I have. The other one I have is that our borough is ranked against other municipalities based on our tree canopy, and we're currently ranked 56th out of 130 municipalities. The removal of those trees, I know you're going to plant new ones, but it'll take years for the new ones to get up to what you're replacing. So our tree canopy, I looked this afternoon at the date, and we could drop now being the 70th or 75th. And that means a lot to our community in terms of livability and accessibility. And finally, the last comment, during a tree planting at Beulah Church a weekend ago, I met with folks from Beulah Presbyterian Church who were unaware of the roundabout. and that roundabout may encroach on your private property. And where their concern is on the northwest quadrant, you may be impacting historical graves that you may need to move. In fact, I did a little bit of research, and the American Institute of Architects has added a requirement for dealing with that, and it's a pretty extensive effort. And that's something you folks really need to investigate before you do. All my findings have been put in writing to the borough manager and to the vice president of council, to whom I've been reporting. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Elizabeth Castman.
Hi, I live on 8 Holland Road, and this is my first meeting. You know, except for those feeling meetings where they want us to know what the emotional impact. But I have some concerns with the study of the noise. The idea of 55 decibels in the middle of the night of a conversation when you're trying to sleep, that's not tolerable. I don't think you should consider that negligible. I find that intolerable. You know, it really changes the character of the neighborhood, which is really all I care about. I don't care about all the money that other people are going to make from this. I'm not convinced that our residential home values are going to go up. The slide that you flashed, I think they started at lower values than ours. I think I don't feel at all calmed by your analysis. And finally, your air quality statement that monitoring is going to be sufficient. What you need to do to anticipate the impact of all those cars is modeling, and the modeling tells you if you're going to have even worse air quality than we have. We have a problem with the 375. Adding more stuff to that is, are you going to push us into dangerous health conditions? So I'm very nervous about this. I wish someone could tell me what a simple resident can do to stop this. Is there going to be a referendum that we get to vote on, or is this just, out of our hands already? I'm very upset. That's my comment.
Thank you for your comment. We're going to move on to Susan Sterrett, which I'm sure I'm mispronouncing.
No, you're pronouncing it correctly. My name is Susan G. Sterrett. I say that because there's many Susan Sterretts in Pittsburgh. I'm married to Peter Spurdes, and we own a house at 1903 Hampstead Drive. I'm a professor in Kansas, so I'm here some of the time and some of the time not. During the pandemic, I'm here. So my concerns, I'm very concerned about the EIS, the Environmental Impact Statement, with a review on it. Usually an EIS is written by a third party, and the way it's in the proposed ordinance is that it'll be done by the applicant, I think Hillwood. So I think that ought to be looked at, and then it'll just be approved by the borough engineer or somebody he or she designates. So I looked up what it means to be an EIS, and when a federal agency writes an EIS, there are requirements about what it has to include, or there's a format. But I don't know that there's anything about what this EIS has to include in our case. And so I think we need, I don't think the zoning ordinance the way it is now is really going to give us very much in terms of environmental protection. That's my concern. It needs more review. There's been some statements about further review, but not who will do it or how it will be organized. So I just like to say, I don't think the zoning ordinance guarantees us very much, because it gives Hillwood so much leeway to do what they want. I'd like to say what I think ought to be in the EIS. The first one is air quality. So I'm not sure where the air quality is measured. And we know that these trucks are going to have some effect. We've been told in terms of percentage, but it's a 20-acre building. I mean, that doesn't mean a lot to me to say that it's low in terms of percentage for the size of the building. So I'd like to know, you know, a more concrete number of how many trucks and what kind of air quality effect. The second thing is, if it's only our borough, I actually care enormously about how the school children will be affected. And some of the air might, you know, get to the school children. So I wonder if we could have an air quality report specifically about the effect on school children. Now that affects our borough, because if the school is not going to be a positive, have a positive impact, that's going to affect property values too. So I think it is relevant to the borough. The second thing is drones. This may sound crazy, but drones, most people dismiss this thinking that it was last mile delivery, but that's not the case. Amazon is very committed to using drones, and there's a new thing called cargo drones that carry a whole lot more and would probably not just be restricted to last mile delivery. So I would like that to be in the EIS. Hillwood hasn't said anything about it, but of course that's something that might happen. It certainly would happen in the first 5 or 10 years of the building's use. Let's see. I think the last thing is two things. Predictions versus commitments. We hear a lot of predictions. It would be nice to know which ones are commitments. And then the last thing is end of life. I mean, we're in this boat because Westinghouse didn't have a plan for end of life. This 20-acre building is going to be unlike any other building we've had around. It would be nice to know, in fact, I think we ought to demand that there be some plan and some money set aside for plans for end of life of this project, because it's going to be very unusual. It's going to be super expensive to demolish for something else. Have I used up my 3 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, bye.
Thank you. I appreciate your comment. Eric Grotzinger.
Well, my comments are that our tax base has been going down. Our taxes have been increasing. Our school district is in trouble. And what we have here is a proposal to have a 21st century business and facility in our borough. And this is not, I grew up in South Jersey, and in my town were 2 oil refineries and a DuPont's dynamite plant. And that was dangerous, and there was a lot of noise. What we have here is we're going to have a facility that's going to have a low environmental impact. And it's going to be, this is where the future is going. And we should be happy that Hillwood is willing to come in here, remediate that site, and make it productive. In terms of environmental concerns, I'd be really concerned if we don't remediate that site and all those chemicals are leaching into the ground up there. It's best that we get that site remediated and we get a facility, a 21st century facility that's gone where the country is going in e-commerce. And this will be a great addition to our community and make us a better community. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Yolanda Covington.
Hello, good evening. My name is Yolanda Covington Ward, and I live at 2709 Saybrook Drive with my husband, Lincoln Ward. We've been Churchill residents for 11 years. And my main question and comment is really about the traffic study. I'd like to know more about how the traffic study addresses the intersection at Beulah and McCready Road. This is already an intersection that's very busy, especially early in the morning and during the commutes, the commuting hours. And one of the major issues is turning left at that intersection. It's not signaled, and it's very difficult to make a left turn. And with this new roundabout, the roundabout will be at the intersection of William Penn and Beulah. It won't be at McCready and Beulah. And so people who are coming off of 22, who are coming on McCready Road, which could include and will include, I'm assuming, some of the employees of the facility who are coming from Monroeville or, you know, coming from that Penn Hills potentially, will be coming down that road, McCready Road. And it's very difficult to turn there. There's a lot of traffic there. So I really wanted to know whether there will be any specific improvements to that area. You've mentioned potentially moving the park and ride. So I'm also asking what's going to happen to the bus service. There are more than 30 homes of Churchill residents that are on McCready Road and Saybrook Drive behind Beulah Church. And so the only way to leave that part of our community is to come down McCready Road. There's no other way to leave it. And so I'm really concerned about the traffic study taking this particular intersection into account. Because if you have this double lane roundabout, which is at William Penn and Beulah, as the cars are moving about, if that particular intersection is unsignaled, how are we going to be turning in? How is it going to deal with the other traffic that's coming? So I'd just like to hear a response to that. That's my biggest concern, because I think there'll be a lot more traffic there. And the other thing I would again reiterate is the bus service. There are members of the community in Churchill who do use the bus. I work at the University of Pittsburgh, and sometimes I do take the bus. And so the 67, the P67 comes down McCready. And so is the bus service also going to be moved? And so that's what I would like to have addressed in terms of the traffic study and how it impacts that particular intersection. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. We're going to move on to W. Boers, what I've got. When you name it, I can only read it as it says.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, great. It's really Tom Borellis. It's William Thomas. And the Borellis is B as in boy, O-R-E-L-L-I-S. 1634 Jamestown Place. Been a resident of Churchill for 50 years. I think all the previous comments are good. It's hard to make a statement without asking a question, so I'll try this. But it's my understanding that what you're looking for now is an approval of this so-called discretionary text. And that's what you're moving on with. But you've plugged in again the site plan and all the items that are related to the development of the site. I'll start with the traffic plan, and some of the comments I've heard are right on. One of the things that has not been mentioned, and I know your simple solution is to double the lanes, but it is the William Penn Highway turn onto the Parkway going west. And with any kind of truck traffic, you're going to back that up all the way to the roundabout. So I think you need to take a harder look at that turn that's off of William Penn Highway onto the Parkway. I think that's one that has to be taken. I agree with Yolanda. I think, your plan simply shows the roundabout. I'm assuming that you've done some studies that talk about how the grading of that into the site would impact the whole area. And I'm surprised to hear from Ken that the reaction from Beulah is that you haven't talked to them. So I think that's important, because I've had experience in trying to remove grave sites, and it sure isn't easy, and it's not a good way to move forward. You talk about the existing structure removal and environmental cleanup. It's still not clear to me how much environmental cleanup needs to be done to regulate this site. I've had some experience with this. I know that if we had a developer that was going to come in here and do housing, the environmental cleanup would have to be more stringent than maybe the kind of facility you have here. But it seems to me that this facility needs to look at more than the 21st century. It looks to beyond that. It needs to look into a time what we have not designed for yet. And I think that the environmental cleanup, the site plan, the buildings need to take on more creativity than what I'm seeing has been developed in other sites. And with the amount of money that Amazon keeps advertising that's available, I think it would be good for Churchill to have a very high-end 21st, 22nd century building, and something that is worth looking at. You look at the roof structures of this and you're now going to look down on it. The question would be, can they not be something more than just a roof? Do we have solar energy in here? And again, alternative energy. I'm going to close up here because what's happening is I see us commenting on a site plan that, if I'm correct in understanding, will be represented to the borough and gateway engineers, and that some of these things may be incorporated into it. But the long situation is that we have a long road of additional approvals and improvements with that site plan. To me, that site plan is just your standard cookie cutter. Here's what we would do with all the parking, and here's where the building goes. Churchill wants more than that. We want something that's worthwhile looking at, not only for somebody driving by, but for the residents as well. And to mention the thing about Ken's tree removal, my experience is you got a lot of grading that you got to do in this site to put that flat building. And so new trees are going to be important because they're going to be the only solution for this landscape. And you need to put more consideration into the landscape than just plunking down those circles on this site. So with that, I'll back off. I have supplied a lot of my feelings to Alex, and we'll continue to do so as you move forward. But thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Harry Chmello. I'm sorry, I missed Peter. So 1 second, it's Peter Ray is next. My apologies. Peter, please unmute if you would like to speak. I'll give him one more chance here.
What's the name?
Again, it's Peter Ray. Here.
That's W-R-A-Y.
Yes, indeed. All right. You're up, Peter. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't see any mention of sustainability in your presentation. And given the interest that Amazon has in confronting the climate crisis, will any consideration be given to adopting the production and use of renewable energy on the site? A simple example would be solar panels over the 1,800 unit employee parking lot. And that's my major comment. I'd like to just express support for the idea given by Susan Sterrett on what would be stranded assets and the danger of stranded assets, which we're facing now and many other areas within the eastern suburbs, and some kind of guarantees or commitments to take care of what will happen to this building, which may only exist for 20 years. This is a very dynamic economy that we're going through, and lots of social changes. And there's no guarantee that this facility is going to stay there for any more than 20, 40, 50 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Peter, can you state your address for the record?
Pardon?
Can you state your address for the record?
Yes, 110 Royal Oak Avenue.
Thanks, Peter. I appreciate it. Harry, you are up, sir.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you. State
Okay.
your name, address, and you're on.
All right, I'm Harry Tumnello. I live at 1706 Williamsburg Place. Been here about 26 years. I'd like to echo something that Tom Bareilles alluded to when he was speaking, and that is basically all we're really considering at this point is whether or not to make a zoning change in order to move this process forward. None of the presentation, as far as I understood it, was intended to be a final version of any of these studies. And so, since that's the case, the real choice that we're looking at in this vote in a couple of weeks is, do we want to look and examine whether or not this project can move ahead with the correct environmental impact studies, with the correct traffic studies, with the correct landscaping design to make it a practical and successful project. And since that's really where we are at this point, many of the comments which I was listening to tonight are very interesting and should be acted on, but that's for the next phase. At this point, my suggestion and my hope is that we will at least not terminate all possibility of the project, but that we will move ahead and let the project planning move forward. And that's really where I am. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Moving forward to Brad Ward. Brad, I'm looking for you. I see you, Brad. There you go. The floor is yours.
Yeah, so this is Brad Ward. I live at 2271 McRae, which is right next to the on-ramp to the Parkway West, right off of Penn Avenue. And just kind of going back to the last meeting, you know, I don't think, you know, I'm offering up basically our home for someone to come and sit and count cars as I have, because I'm looking at the numbers and what traffic we have today. And looking at the 69 loading docks, the 203 trailer parking spaces, and the 100 or 1,000 to 1,500 employees with an 800 square foot facility. Now they've talked about the ingress and parts of the egress, but the main egress, and the access back to the Parkway West remains as it is today. No light. The telephone pole gets hit and taken out at least once a year. It's been hit twice this last week or last 2 weeks, and is at probably at a 10 or 20% grade right now. So it's probably set to be replaced again. And that is because tractor trailers cannot make the turn. I just really feel that, and I know, just like the last guy said about where we're at in the process, but I just feel that, Amazon and is it Hillman really need to step back and think about being a good neighbor. That's how I think of this. And, we're the ones who have to live with this after it's in. And I just think that a little bit more consideration needs to be thought of with the traffic study. I've never seen anyone out here doing a traffic study. I really don't know how they are done, but I would expect there's, something with someone sitting in a truck counting cars. I'm not really sure. But I would, love to offer up our home, our driveway, for someone to sit and take a look at what's going on. I just don't see this road that's been here supporting that extra traffic, that and us losing power whenever someone takes out the telephone pole. That's all. Thank you.
Steve Landon. The floor is yours, Steve. Well, I think we lost Steve. You there? I saw you, and now I don't see you. If you come back, feel free to raise your hand again, and I will come back and call you. Moving on to Paul Welsh.
Yes, Paul Welsh. I live at 2606 McCready Road. Been a resident of Churchill for over 22 years. Again, I'm speaking to the two-lane roundabout. Well, it sounds good. Let me share my 2 cents with you. Again, as Yolanda stated, making a left turn off of McCready on the Beulah will be next to impossible. As it is now, cars traveling west on William Penn Highway now turn right on red illegally, which is dangerous. So with a 2-lane roundabout, I'll have to face 2 lanes of cars coming at me when I'm attempting to turn left from McCready on the Beulah Road. Again, as Yolanda stated, our only means of egress onto Beulah is from McCready. Has there been any thought about building access, direct access from the site directly onto 376 to go eastbound and westbound? That's all I have.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your comments. Moving on to Keith Balke.
Thanks, Mr. President. This is Keith Balke. I live at 36 Churchill Road and grew up in Churchill, recently moved back about a year ago, and I just have 2 brief questions here. My first is around, we talked about vehicular traffic, but my question is around pedestrian traffic. I'm a frequent user of the Churchill roads, and I'm curious to know how pedestrian traffic would work, specifically the intersections of Beulah Road and Churchill Road, as well as the roundabout. How does one cross the street at I'll say an uncontrolled intersection? And then really the second area is I really appreciate Hillwood's partnership with the communities that they work with. You know, I would just say one thing to consider both for the leadership of Churchill as well as Hillwood is having 2 young boys and growing up in this community. Anytime I want to do anything, whether it's go to a playground, go to a soccer field, I find myself leaving Churchill. So thank you, and appreciate all the time and effort that's gone into this meeting.
Duly noted. Thank you for your comment. Moving forward on to Matt Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Matt Curtis. I live at 1619 Branning Road. We've lived here since 1998. I'm a general contractor, commercial general contractor. I've worked for a developer for 25 years. So I know the business very well, and I know what Hillwood's going through to get this project approved. I'm actually in favor of the project. I think it'd be great for the community. I see the impact that our development in Homestead had at the waterfront on those communities. You know, the building is not a manufacturing facility that's going to cause a lot of noise and off-gassing and those kinds of things. So I think that's good. One concern I have is the traffic studies and the timing of those. You know, we're in the middle of COVID, so you know, there's no one going to ball games. There's very little traffic into the city. I think the occupancy rate in the city of Pittsburgh is about 18% or something like that. So, you know, when are these traffic studies being done? I would have to believe that you couldn't use this year as a model. So just curious about that. But overall, I think we'd be silly to pass up on an opportunity where, you know, they go to Monroeville, they'll go to Penn Hills, they'll be somewhere where we will be faced with the traffic, but we won't see the benefits of the development. So, you know, obviously there's a lot to go through, but I am in favor of passing the first zoning approval. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I generally don't comment at all, but I have to comment on your cat. Love the cat behind you.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Moving on to Scott Roman.
Yes. My name is Scott Roman. Me and my wife, Eliza Porterfield, live at 2024 Hampstead Drive. I'd like to echo the sustainability concerns that other people have brought up. I think that definitely needs to be a strong consideration, especially if this site is going to last for a long time. It would be nice to know that it was built and operated sustainably. Generally, I'm pretty happy about the idea of developing the property and rejuvenating it, getting a better tax base and having more money come into the community to sustain stuff like recreation and and the schooling and all that stuff. I'd echo Keith's comments about pedestrian traffic. I am an avid runner and cyclist, and I use those intersections that we're talking about a lot. And so if there's increased car traffic, I'm concerned about the safety for runners, but also safety for cyclists. I think with the sustainability mindset, cycling is an important way for some people to get around. I get to and from the city cycling through those roads a lot, and it's not a safe place to be on a bike. And if there's increased traffic, I would definitely like to see some sort of address for cycling, either bike lanes or something to address that safety concern. Thank you.
Duly noted. Thank you for your comments. Moving on to Brittany Buck. The floor is yours.
Hey, Jay, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I see you.
I'm Chris Lewandowski. Last name is Lewandowski.
You know it goes by the name that's on there.
Yes, yes, I know. And me and my wife, Brittany, we live at 398 Homer Drive. One thing I just want to say is I definitely support this development and definitely support the approval of the amendment change. One of the big issues that I've had, especially when searching for a home, we recently moved into Churchill at the beginning of the year. The biggest issue, people always say, why don't you go to Westmoreland County? Taxes are better, school districts are better, stuff of that nature. And a project like this will improve the tax base, hopefully improve the school district, that I could remain in Churchill throughout my life here and be able to send my kids to Woodland Hills and continue on with that. I know one of the concerns are like what I know somebody brought up, like the trees on the actual property and that sort of thing. The way I look at it, my family grew up in Turtle Creek. I knew going, for Christmas, I'd drive down the parkway and see a big, illuminated Christmas tree on the George Westinghouse property. Now, when you drive down, you see a property that looks like Chernobyl. So definitely want something to come in, improve the aesthetics, improve the property, and improve the tax base. So definitely support this.
Thank you, Chris. Again, I normally don't comment on anyone, but I will just comment that Chris is also an officer here for Churchill for his time on our streets. Moving forward to Carly Fern.
Hi, can everyone hear me okay?
Absolutely. Good.
Great.
Get going.
So my name is Carly. My husband and I live at 102 Huntington Drive, which is a neighborhood that's right off the on-ramp or off the off-ramp into Monroeville Business District. We've been here for about 2 years, and in general, we are in favor of this project and are looking forward to the revitalization. I would like to echo everyone else's sustainability and traffic comments. The one thing that I would add is also just a question perhaps for the Port Authority as well to look into this about how bus routes would be affected, and also the potential to potentially place a new bus stop of some kind, maybe on that North Public Road, to potentially reduce some of the car traffic and then provide access to those who may not already have cars. So that's just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And best sound of the day. Good mic. I'm moving forward. I have Steve here, but I believe we called on you already.
Yes, but I was having audio problems.
Not a problem. Come on back through.
Okay, everybody. Thank you. Good evening. Stephen Landay, currently 3786 Rural Court since 2015, and before that, 2178 Beulah Road since 1972. I'm all for the redevelopment of this wonderful property. And also forgive me if any of my questions or concerns have been already raised in previous meetings. If they haven't been done already, will you release the audio acoustic reports and as well as the well-vetted traffic report analysis? I'm just going to hit these bullet points and just fly through this for the record. Next, where else in the country has a site like this or similar to this proposed have been built and established in a community similar to this? Next, What is the expected increase of inflow, outflow traffic to the site, both business and employee traffic? What is the expected size of the commercial vehicles and percentages that will be expected? For example, trucks per hour. Is this a 24/7 operation? And what, if any, will be the peak and off-peak times of arrivals and departures? Next, why hasn't there been any consideration for a new east and westbound on-ramp instead of using the existing William Penn Highway westbound entrance, which is already a problem for large trucks making that sharp left turn? The Churchill Road eastbound on-ramp is a civil engineering failure at this point with a flow of traffic we have now. 50 years ago, a 100-yard on-ramp, was fine, but this hasn't been the case in 20 years. Next, every vehicle exiting this site has only one outlet, as far as I can tell, and that is the Beulah Road exit/entrance. Beulah Road, as most of us already know, is a traffic problem with the increase of vehicles over the last 3 decades. A roundabout alone with the current volume of traffic would not seem to alleviate the current amount of traffic we have, let alone the additional increase of traffic that this proposal will bring. While this might be somewhat controversial, lastly, the Monroeville Mall just filed for bankruptcy. While I'd hate to miss a development opportunity at this site, I would easily pass on this proposal. Instead, to opt for a regular Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 office development like it used to be, instead of a 24/7 truck operation. Weekday scheduled traffic like a Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 operation can be managed much better and anticipated much more easily than what is being proposed here. And thank you all very much. Good luck.
Thank you. And quite comments. I've got another hand that's popped up, which is Carl Rothenberger.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me okay?
Absolutely. Floor is yours, Carl.
Thank you. Just a couple quick comments. I think in light of all the comments that have been made so far.
Make sure you state your name and address.
Excuse me, Carl Rothenberger. I'm at 1720 Williamsburg Place.
Thank you.
In Blackridge, and I've been here about 35 years. I am in favor of a vote in favor of the amendment to the zoning ordinance. I think it's a necessary step to explore a host of the comments made tonight and others as to a project of this sort. I think that perfect in this process cannot be the enemy of good. I think the council needs to be looking kind of both ways at 5, 10, 15, 20 years out into the future, both for this project, but also assume a lack of this project and looking at the financial pressure on the borough and its residents without a tax base on the commercial side, and looking at what in the world will happen to that property beyond the 20 years it has sat there with who knows what leaching into the environment already. So that's my comment. Take a long view of this and apply judgment to it, but I'm in favor of the amendment. Thank you.
I appreciate your comment. Right. I think that I don't see anybody else's hand up, so I think that clears us past the point of public comment on this issue. I am going to state, if you had any other public comment that you wish to make, we're going to close the public hearing and move forward, at which time I'll also offer the opportunity for kind of standard public comment should anybody have any.
I think Cheryl McAfee would like to speak.
I've got a couple up. Excellent. Well, thank you for catching Cheryl. So, and I've just had another hand that jumped up in too. So Cheryl, unfortunately, I didn't see your hand up, but I'm sure you're waving it furiously, and I just don't see it on my list. So please feel free to take the floor, and then after that, we'll go to Natalie.
Okay. I'm Cheryl McAfee, 2005 Garrick Drive, resident since 1999. I am for the project, but I have a couple of questions. It's hard to, and I know that we're just here to talk about the C1, C2, but it's hard to comment on C1, C2 when we have not seen the final traffic study. That's number one. Next, if you are going to build to the left of the entrance coming in off of Beulah Road and take out all those trees, why, when the buildings are basically to the right, they're already there. And will we be driving down Beulah Road? Will we be seeing something that looks like an industrial park, or will we be seeing this big, tall, you said there's something, I think, 15-foot high. What's that going to look like to people who have to drive down Beulah Road every day? And also, will you be abandoning the Lewin Lane entrance? And many residents are totally unaware of this project, and I'm wondering if the borough is going to send out a newsletter, because many residents don't get the emails and don't know this is going on. And also, Amazon is a fine tenant, but the problem is that Amazon has a lot of renegade truckers that deal with them, because I actually rent to Amazon, and they're in my parking lot because they're running out of space. Every place they go, they run out of space. And if you really want to see what an Amazon facility looks like, go down to Crafton on Roswell and look, and you'll see trucks all down Roswell, all over everybody's property, because there's not enough room inside for them to go. So I really think that we need to make sure that when they come, they cannot pull, they have to make sure, we have to do something to ensure that their truckers do not leave that facility and aren't parked all up and down Beulah Road waiting to get into Amazon, because Amazon is growing so fast that it'll be an eyesore. They'll be parking in front of people's driveways down Beulah Road, and we have to make sure that they can't do that. They have to stay in that property and not spread out, and not just them. It's their people who come in and bring things to them. Okay, they'll be coming in from Arizona, they'll be coming in from California, they'll be coming in from all across the country, and they don't care. They come in and park wherever they want to, and they block people. So that's just my comment. I think it's a good idea, but you have to really control the traffic and control the guests that come to truck things in for Amazon.
Thank you for your comment, Cheryl. Was there anybody else that had a comment? I thought I had another hand up and it went down. So yes, I see you waving your hand. I can't quite get the name. You need to. You're on. I've unmuted you since I see you.
All right. Hi.
Thank you. Oh, wrong unmute. So I've got two at once. So we'll go with Mr.
Servi.
Mr. Servi. Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes. Floor is yours.
All right. So I love what's being said. My name is Larry Servi. I've lived here on 107 Valiant Drive for 56 years. And I've loved being a part of this Churchill community. I taught at Churchill High School. And so this is, this is paradise for me. However, in this last couple of years, I've had to deal with this property. We have a gate that many.
You're coming in and out a little bit. We can't hear you. You are in fact muted again, sir.
Am I here now?
You are there now. Continue.
All right. So I'll start over. I said my name is Larry Servi, 107 Valiant Drive, and I've lived here for 56 years. And at the end of, right next to my driveway, about 100 yards up, there's a gate that goes onto this property. And a number of movies were shot upon that property. And so at 6 a.m. in the morning, there would be these trucks backing up. And it was a very much of an annoyance. And then there was all sorts of debris on the road. So I'm hoping that, they're not going to be using our street at some point. Right now, I don't hear any talk about that, but, who knows? It's like we need to use that street in order to get up there. And we are on the southern end, right? Valiant Drive?
Yes.
Okay, so now will we be affected by that water problem? If that's where the water basin, as you say, they're planning to put those water basins or whatever there? All right, so, I just expressed my concern, and if anyone will get back to me on that, that'll be great.
Thank you for your comment.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone else who, yes, I see you and you can unmute now. Yes, I see you waving your hand, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know why my name is not showing on the screen, but anyway, I'm Ilona Tassone, 3314 Skaithlock Road. And I've lived in this community since 1991, and I also am a real estate agent and have been selling houses here since 1989. And I love this community, and I've been I share everyone's concerns about the many details that we don't know yet about this development by Hillwood. However, I have watched this property decline, that we have lost income from our two main sources of commercial taxes. I've watched our taxes grow, and I think that in the best ideals for our community, we need to at least move forward to pass this change in the zoning and at least enter into further negotiations so that we can have benefits from this idea. I do not foresee anyone else coming forth within the next 20 years, given what is going on with commercial real estate and people, more and more people working from home, buildings becoming vacant. I can't foresee anyone else coming forward with such a proposal to help our community in many ways. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Let's see if anybody else kind of do the, ask everybody that please mute. Let's do a quick scroll, see if I'm missing anyone. I don't see any hands raised. See if I see anybody else who not raised.
Mr. Dwarn, we have a Kathy Bordner looking to speak.
Thank you. You see somebody quicker than I do. I'm trying to run through it. So Kathy, the floor is yours.
My name is Kathy Bordner, and I live at 1926 Hampstead Drive. My husband and I just moved here in August of 2019, so we're relatively new. I would be very interested in the opportunity to walk on the site, and I'm sure many other people have had that opportunity already, but I think it would be great for the borough to offer that opportunity, maybe have a day when people could, get a tour of the site. My concern about this is that it just from what I can see from the outside, it seems like a remarkable site. A lot of green space and a lot of trees and so forth. And I worry that putting something like what is being proposed is more or less cutting off our nose to spite our face. And I realize that this company is here now and making this proposal, and it seems like a golden opportunity. But looking at, the size of that building and the size of that parking lot, it's just going to be plopped on there that it just, to me, does not seem the right fit for this site. And somebody mentioned that, malls are declaring bankruptcy. I hope we don't lose the Monroeville Mall, but a vacant mall site would be so much more appropriate for something, a project like that. And I know we don't have that in Churchill, and we all want the increased taxes. I understand that. But again, it's just not, in my mind, the right fit for that site. Someone else mentioned, and I too would like to see an example of an Amazon distribution center built in a neighborhood like this that is so residential, homes built in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and not something in a city where there's, a lot of older homes in the area that, yes, the property values do go up, but it's because they're depressed. I'd like to know examples of this type of facility going in a community like Churchill. I would like to see the appraiser's study on property value. Is that going to be made available to the public? And somebody else mentioned the wall along Beulah. I would like to see a rendering to see what that's going to look like. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else that I am missing here? I'm going to do the scroll of faces again, see if I see any hands up. I see Ms. Maltz has actually raised her hand, so the floor is yours. Debbie Maltz. I know you're there. There you
Hi,
go.
thanks. Debbie Maltz, 2002 Garrick Drive. I'm very excited about the proposal. I just wanted to touch on what Cheryl said, and I do think there are a lot of Churchill residents that are not up to speed on the proposal. And since we have so many participants this evening, I'd like to just encourage everyone to speak with your neighbors and encourage people to get involved. So we have a lot of great input on this project. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Debbie. Duly noted. Right. And is there anyone else as I scroll through all the faces? I like scrolling through the faces, though, I have to admit. Okay. I think at this point, unless I'm missing someone, I'm sure the solicitor can correct me if I'm wrong, that we can at this time close the public hearing and move on to the remainder of the agenda. Is there anything that I'm missing in this, Mr. Solicitor?
Mr. President, we did at the beginning offer the applicant a very brief sort of kind of wrap up statement. If there was any of these items they wanted to address at this point, it's up to council.
And that is why I pay you the big bucks here in the wonderful borough of Churchill, so that you can help me from making the mistakes that I would otherwise make. Absolutely correct. And quite frankly, I think something that our residents would want to hear. So I will offer the applicant the opportunity to respond to any of the public comments if they would like to, and would remind council members that also, I think the solicitor had said at that time that if we had any questions as well, that we would be able to address them. I will try and keep this kind of orderly amongst council members, and we'll take it from there. So I'll turn it back to the applicant first, and then I will kind of navigate through council members.
Thank you, Mr. President. We appreciate it. Thank you to everyone for your very thoughtful comments. We know that this is a meaningful development in the borough, and we appreciate everyone's time being here with us. And there were a lot of good ideas that were shared. We appreciate that. I just wanted to briefly respond to a couple of quick things. One is there was a question about whether we in fact met with Beulah Church. We did. We met with Reverend Fillmore and either 3 or 4 of the senior members of her leadership team on March 4th of 2020. And we followed up with them subsequently, and they've asked us to wait to have a further detailed discussion until after this process with Borough Council is completed. But we certainly have met with the church and know that they're an important stakeholder in the community. There were several questions about sustainability, and that's something that is important both to Hillwood and to Amazon. And they evaluate each one of their sites individually, but just as an example, the most recent facility that they completed in this area, with their in Findlay Township out by the airport, that is outfitted for solar panels. And so they are going to be installed on that facility. So it's something that they take seriously and that they will give serious consideration to on this site as well. There were some questions about stormwater and whether that was being adequately addressed in light of the fact that there will be some trees removed that will be replaced with new trees. And I just wanted to mention again that the borough engineers preliminary review indicated that they thought that Hillwood's stormwater proposal was sufficient. So we certainly will take into account any impact that the removal of trees has, and we will be certain to follow the borough's and the state's guidelines. There were some questions about the park and ride and what will happen with bus service. So we've met twice so far with Port Authority, and they're excited about the project and they're engaged. And so there are 2 things that are likely to emerge out of that. One is there will continue to be a park and ride somewhere in Churchill. We're still working on figuring out the final location in concert with the borough's elected officials and with the Port Authority. And so the bus service will not be interrupted. We'll still have the same buses we have now. And in fact, our aim is to increase the public transit opportunities to get to the site so that, because right now, for example, if you happen to live in, Turtle Creek was mentioned, it's hard to get from Turtle Creek to Churchill on the bus. So since we have this sort of hub and spoke system, you got to get on the bus in Turtle Creek and drive downtown and then turn right around and go back out to Churchill. And that doesn't make sense for people who would want to work at this facility. So the discussions we've been having with Port Authority are about adding some additional direct bus routes that would go from some of the other neighboring communities to Churchill, to the park and ride. So that's something that we think is important to our tenant. It's also important to the Port Authority and to the borough, so that we're making the best use of the public transit system that we can. The last thing that I wanted to mention was there were some questions about direct ramps onto the parkway. And so that's something that that Borough Council has very thoughtfully raised also, and that the traffic engineers are working through. And so what's happening right now is that the Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission, which is an organization of a number of counties in this region, they submit every year to PennDOT something that they call a TIP, which is a Transportation Improvement Plan. And so working with the borough's elected officials, we had the concept of a westbound ramp added to this commission's traffic improvement plan. And so the study of that ramp is being paid for by this developer, by Hillwood. And because it's a federal highway, there is a very, very long process to have something like that evaluated, because it involves not only the Churchill Borough and not only PennDOT, but also the Federal Highway Administration. So it's a very long process. And so, if that were to happen, that's like a decade-long process. So it's not something that, either the borough or the developer or PennDOT, even if they all agreed they wanted to do it, they could just do overnight. It's a very long process. But I just wanted to mention that the idea is being seriously considered both by the state and regional government, with that initial study being funded by this developer. So we appreciate that concern, and we're doing our part to facilitate the study. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing. Mr. Dwarn, would it be okay if our traffic engineer, Chris Prisk, addresses a few other of the specific traffic comments?
That would be fine.
Thank you. Thanks, Leif. I'll keep it quick. Some of the items that came up, I just wanted to touch on. One was access from McCready to Beulah. That came up a few times. What I mentioned in previous meetings that I didn't bring up tonight was we were fully aware of the issue of a left turn from McCready to Beulah as being a concern and a problem currently. And so that was one of the study area intersections, Beulah and McCready, as well as William Penn and Beulah. And so both of those intersections were analyzed and simulated and modeled. What the roundabout will do is actually provide more gaps in the southbound traffic so that that left turn movement can happen with less delay. So currently right now, the signal turns red, southbound traffic backs up and kind of blocks that egress. So what the analyses show is that the roundabout will actually give you more opportunities to exit. So that is being addressed in the study. Another intersection that came up was William Penn and the Parkway East on-ramp. That intersection was in our traffic study, and the analyses show that it has acceptable levels of service. So that's either level service D or better. Actually, in this study area, everything was a level service C or better. So analysis-wise, that intersection is operating acceptably. There is some talk back and forth whether or not there's going to be a restriping effort to provide a dedicated left turn lane as opposed to a shared left through lane. But again, that intersection is being addressed. Let me just go through quickly here. And then the issue of pedestrian or bicycle accommodations, that's also being factored into the design of the proposed improvements, especially the roundabout. And then one last thing that I didn't mention quickly was, as a point of comparison, the previous Westinghouse facility actually was projected to generate more traffic than what this new proposed development is. So I know it's been a long time since you've seen traffic because of the site, but according to standard ITE trip gen methodology, the previous Westinghouse would have generated more traffic than what this site would. I think I hit on all our questions. Thanks, Leif.
Okay, was there anything else, Leif, that you wanted to comment on before I move over to council?
That's everything. Thank you very much for the opportunity to answer a couple of questions that came up. We appreciate it.
Excellent. So at this time, I'm going to allow council to ask questions they may have. Again, if it's comments, we'll have comment at the end for council. This is kind of pointed questions if you have them available that you wanted asked why we have the applicant here. So this is related again to the public hearing as the zoning amendment. And so at this point, I'm kind of trying to scroll through our council people to see who has questions, who doesn't. I think I'll do the same as I have previously. And just kind of go through you guys in order if that works for folks. And if you don't have a question, it's fine to just simply state that you don't have a question.
Jay, I think Chris has a follow-up comment.
I'm sorry, I saw one other note. Our traffic counts were conducted pre-COVID. So we don't have to worry about the counts being lower than normal because they were conducted before the pandemic started. But then also, it's kind of safe to assume, I'm not sure if traffic volumes will ever get back to what they were. So our study's even more conservative than it was. Thank you, Kevin, appreciate that.
Thank you, Kevin, for pointing it. So I'm just gonna go in order that I see you all in terms of council, opening up for specific questions if you have them. Going in order of my Hollywood squares. Beginning with Don. So, Councilman DeFranco, any questions on your end?
No questions.
Thank you. Moving through the list then, Norma. She's on mute, but I'm assuming that looked like a no question, but I'm not 100%.
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. I think I had questions about traffic and they were helpful, so.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Adam. Even though still muted when you said it, I'm pretty sure you said no questions. So I think we are pretty good. Kevin.
Yeah, thanks, Jay, and also thanks, Chris. Thanks, Leif. I'm still trying to work through the numbers on the roundabout and the other intersections. One specific question: the eastbound traffic onto 376. Do you see it coming out of the Beulah Road exit and going up Churchill Road and getting on at the top of Holland? Or do you see them making a left turn and going to the roundabout and taking a right? I'm confused about that.
I think we had a split that showed a mix of both, but I think predominantly it was going to head out straight and use the on-ramp opposite of Holland.
Okay. And do you see much traffic taking a right off of Beulah Road and going southbound on Beulah Road? Truck traffic specifically.
Predominantly truck traffic will be coming off the interstate and either using the direct on-ramp to the site. So that would be if they're heading eastbound. And then if they're heading westbound, they would be getting off at the new roundabout and turning left.
Okay, so you don't see a lot of traffic going southbound onto Beulah Road, outbound from the facility?
No.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thanks. Well, thank you. I think that the roundabout and the traffic needs more questions and answers. I am for this project. Quite frankly, I don't see what other type of facility can fit in there. And
hey, Kevin, I don't want to limit your comment, but I really just want to keep it in the question space. So you'll have comment at the end that you can point on your position. Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it. Valerie?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Excellent. And Diane? Cannot hear a word you're saying, but I'm sure it's the most important thing ever spoken.
I'm so sorry. Not at this time, thank you.
Nor do I. So that moves us forward then to the point that I believe we can close public comment if I am correct, and we will move. We do have appears a presentation from Kevin McGraw of from CC Mountain, right? In the library. Is that where we're at here?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'll be brief since it's 9:07.
So it's a long meeting. It is.
Yeah, yes. And I've already got the text from my wife. My daughter's looking for me. So I am here first and foremost to thank the council for the continued support of CC Miller Library in Edgewood and the newish branch in Forest Hills. And we just want to kind of check in with all the boroughs and say thank you and just kind of update you on how the library has been functioning, especially since the pandemic. So like every other library everywhere, the library of course closed as in March, and immediately the folks at CC Miller started holding programming of some kind, and they took to Facebook and Zoom to have story times and things like that for children. So there is still no in-person programming at any of the facilities, but what the folks at the library were able to do is pivot and do some great things at some of our parks. And at Lions Park, which is very close to us here, they illustrated, they had a story stroll. I don't know if anyone saw that. You could walk along and read a story at their park. And they also had some in-person story times. And my family attended those, and they were really very popular. And they are the first library in the county to actually have those in-person programming since the closing as a result of the pandemic. So just wildly popular grab and go kits, things like that. So as far as Churchill, there's no library in Churchill. We did use the borough building for programming, but not at the moment. There is that Dropbox that's on the borough property there, and Forest Hills is relatively close. There are almost 1,000 residents that have active library cards, and what we mean by active library cards is that they've used them in the last year. So that says really good things about Churchill, I think. And Churchill specific, I believe the borough has funded the library at about $1,500 the last several years in a row, something like that. And, of course, I'm here to talk a little bit about maybe we could increase that, see if we can get that increased for the next year, get it into the budget. The more money that the library is able to have attributed to it, the more money it could unlock at the state funding level. And there's some anticipated loss with the funding as a result of the pandemic, and there's no offset in sight for that. So if that is something that the council would like to discuss for the budget for next year, everyone at the library would really appreciate it. And thank you for your time this evening.
Much appreciate your comment, and we certainly will discuss it as we look at the budget, I think without a doubt. So this moves us into the discussion items that we have for the workshop. Just kind of rolling through these. Obviously, everybody has the minutes, just making sure that we acknowledge that y'all have it. I don't know if anybody had any comments about them or any revisions that were necessary. I'm assuming that we're good to go. If not, please feel free to bring that up. Anything outside of acknowledging, any comment on minutes that needs to be made, or can we just move forward? I'm going to assume by silence that is the case. As you know, we have the grant in terms of the GROW grant. So we've got on here discussing an agreement with Alcosan. So Alex, can you speak to that for a brief moment outside of kind of standard, what we're talking? I lost you.
Yes. So an unbelievable amount of work went into it, from Ralph to Kevin to Diane to the engineers at Gateway, the folks who supported the Collins Road pump station, and more importantly, some of our friends at Alcosan and others. We were funded for 90% of the request that we made. And that, as your agenda shows, in addition to the money from the state, will cover the cost of eliminating the pump station, which is a liability for the borough and an expense for the borough. And quite frankly, something we hope will not fail completely before we get it replaced, and allow for a gravity line to go to the system. So very good news. Can't say enough thanks going around to people who supported this. And long before I got here, put a lot of hours in making this success. And what we hope to do is get final permits, get it finally designed, and maybe next year let it for bid and get it constructed so we can get that gravity line in place before this pump station fails.
And we appreciate that. I would just point out that a considerable amount of thanks needs to go to Jay Costa for his efforts in ensuring that we were able to obtain this grant. He was very helpful in that process, in making sure that our community was properly recognized.
So next week we will have on the agenda just a resolution to accept and move forward with the grant.
Yeah, outstanding. Always good when we're getting money, right? Moving past that, we have, just so everybody knows, the tax collector, Dan During and Mary During have tendered their resignation. As such, that will also be on the agenda, I assume, for next week. So there is the question of how we will address tax collection, kind of post that. Gavin, did you have any comment with respect to kind of third party, or as the ordinance list, do we need to get somebody new in? Do we appoint? Like what's process for us by ordinance?
So the state law basically provides that you have a certain period of time within which to accept the resignation. So accepting it next week will be fine. The resignation effective date, I believe, is January 20 something in 2021. And so that's the point. Prior to that, you'll need to make an appointment to fill the vacancy. One of the options, and we provided a legal memo to council. Not sure if everyone has had a chance to review it, but take some time to review it between now and the next meeting. There's no immediate action that has to be taken, but there is a method of appointing as a deputy tax collector a third-party sort of tax collection agency or company, and that's what a lot of municipalities are doing these days. So it's something to consider. There's a way. Again, I don't have the memo in front of me, but I think if you take a look at that, you'll get a good read on kind of what your options are, and if it is the borough's desire to have the collection actually done by this third party, it's something that can be arranged as long as we do actually have, a qualified tax collector or the borough manager under certain circumstances who serves as that collector, even though I don't want to use the term figurehead, but it's primarily the third party that will actually do the collecting.
Duly noted, and I think we'll look at it in the terms of what best serves our residents, so that we're able to be most effective for them. I think that's part of why we're looking at this as a potential solution, based on kind of where we've been. Okay, moving through that. Unless anybody had any questions on that at all right now. All right, so moving through that, we'll jump. What have we got? Keystone Collections to assume the LST.
In your packet, on page 59, right after the memo just referred to by Solicitor Rob, is a one-page kind of breakdown of how that works. The borough currently is collecting the LST, the borough staff is, and there's a belief that if we outsourced it, we would collect a good bit more in addition to cover actually the cost of collecting. So that would be key. But don't worry about it now other than to look at that memo as well after the one Gavin referred to get yourself familiar with the issue.
All right, so not really something that we're going to have intent discussion on right now. All right, we do have the commission and other board vacancies, and some. You keep flipping when you do that; it's hard for me to see. And reappointing members to commission and boroughs. So where are we at? Like help me out a little bit, because we've got a number that needs to be filled, Alex. So you walk us through it for a minute, and then I can I'll talk to council on it.
So just real quickly, from the Planning Commission, which we have a vacancy right now, through the Civil Service Commission, which there's some terms that are ending. The Recreation Board, actually, their entire terms ended before I got here in May of 2020. So we need to do some filling of those positions. And I'm going to put together like a scorecard for you in the next day or two that will show you whose terms are up and what's ready to go. Lastly, I know as a particular concern is filling the Human Relations Commission and moving forward on that.
Yep, and as you know, we're looking to set the kind of interview times. I've asked the couple of council folks to come back through. I see you, Kevin, 1 second. And to give me kind of their ranking on the applicants that we have. Kevin.
Yeah, Jay, I'd like to have you revisit the different committees of the council. I know I'm a little bit confused as to who sits on what. So I
agree with you. Just so you know, I think that will be forthcoming, kind of a redesignation of the committee members, especially with having the new council member. But it will be forthcoming in the next probably week or two, to be quite frank. That was on my agenda now that I'm kind of re-engaged, as I said before. So definitely on the short-term agenda. Anything else on boards, commissions? So I did not put police staffing needs on, so let's have the police staffing needs conversation, I suppose. So where are we at? We've got the one member who is currently serving, correct? And what is the status on the other situation in terms of, is it discussable, Gavin? I see it on my agenda, so I just want to be a little cautious here.
I don't want to speak for Mr. Graziani, but I think this is more of sort of a high level question of whether or not the borough is interested in adding, a police officer in addition to the one who will be starting some months from now for budgeting purposes.
And I think as we sit and have the conversation of the budget, but I will open the floor to members on, as you recall, we've had a couple of retirements on whether or not, our current status, if we're looking to increase another one, where we're at. So does anybody have any comments with regard to our current police staffing levels?
I'd like to make a quick comment, Jay. I'd like to see us bring on this new person, I guess by March, see how that goes, and then consider an additional officer.
Duly noted.
So where are we historically? I mean, are we like from 2, 5, 10 years from past? Are we staffed the same as we were 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
If I may.
Sure.
What I understand from the chief is that you're still would be down one. The additional person puts us at 7 plus the chief. And what I think Chief Ackerley is interested in is 8 plus the chief. He is saying, to your point, Dawn, that we are down still one more. But I don't have the history of that. And like Gavin said, I'm just looking for some high level guidance. So, do you want a budget that has the extra officer or both budgets with or without?
Can I ask another related question?
Right. So just to answer your question a little bit, Don, traditionally we sit at anywhere between 9 to 11. Generally around 10, we've been up a little bit higher than that. When we dip to kind of where we are, we start to see a bit of an increase in overtime.
That's what I was going to ask.
It starts to become a little more complicated. So in terms of kind of the cost benefit, the low end kind of sweet spot is 1 more officer. The high end kind of sweet spot is probably 2 more officers past that. But our current space, we are operating low. The challenge with that really isn't just the standard operation. And if I'm giving more information, I'm giving it for everyone, but it may help answer some other questions. One of the big challenges for us is that we operate a lot of single man shifts. And so as soon as we head into times like holidays, when somebody takes vacation, then we really start to crank up overtime, because as we are right now, we're running a lot of 1-man shifts. We go down another person and we get to a point that it's just constant overtime. The other challenge that we've seen already, which led to the kind of second retirement, is anyone gets injured, right, that they're off for any significant period of time, and we end up again at a real deficit, which is actually what happened to us in terms of in the past. So we are basically operating one lower than our minimum optimal.
Okay. One last thing I'll say, I don't want to drag this out because I'm getting tired too. Is that, you know, if the sweet spot is 1 more person, then we'll be able to say, you know, we're running at, 9 person hours or whatever. Maybe get some diversity in the force out of women, add someone underrepresented minority. So that's something else to consider. If we want to get to a sweet spot, we can maybe even double our efforts to increase the diversity.
I would add that on the last hire and every hire since I have come in, that there has been a specific push to what is considered affirmative market. When you talk about the space of diversity, what you're really talking about is affirmative marketing, so that you're staying within what is kind of the proper way. And for people who aren't familiar, affirmative marketing, if you ever look at a job application and at the bottom, it may say something like women and minorities encouraged to apply. That includes, reaching out to organizations. The chief actually did a really good job last time. We had the highest number of minority candidates that we've ever had, and it's just as kind of without getting too detailed into it. And so I would expect the same for any new position that we're looking for. So, well, great point, and one that is active on the rolls.
I just want to say quickly, a couple of years ago, we did that analysis, Jay, with overtime and all of that. And it's an interesting thing to present, because when you break it all down, you find that there's not a lot of money that you have to make up in order to add that officer, given what we pay for overtime. And then if we have any illnesses or any injury. So I think it's important. It's not the obvious that we add another officer and we pay less money. That's
well made. Point well made. I remember the study, which is why it's easy for me to rattle this particular part off, right? Yeah. So, any other comments on staffing? Obviously, we need to kind of sit down and give Alex and Krista kind of some guidance on this, so that they can kind of solidify their budget. So Alex, I know that we had spoken initially had hoped that we would sit and get some budget time on Thursday, but it got kind of run over by my marathon of attempted marathon of meetings. I will have some more free time this week, so I will stop back up and we'll make sure to have that conversation as well. Going to move into I assume kind of the same conversation in terms of general budgeting that you have on 13 with regard to general fund, sanitary sewer road paving funds. Feel free to comment what you'd like, Alex, and we can leave it for discussion if there will be any.
Yeah, so just quickly, in your packet, again, you'll find on pages 60 through 77, the budget narrative that we were able to put together. Krista did an amazing job of of making that and getting it into your hands. And we've worked with Kevin and his committee, which Valerie has now joined, which we're excited about. And we're going to have some more meetings on that. And Jay, we'll work around your schedule as much as possible to get you kind of up to speed and help us guide how you want this to move forward. And the schedule would be in December, would be when council would vote on the budget. And what we would be doing is advertising the budget sometime late November, early December, so the public has a chance both online and then even if they have to schedule a time to come in person to review the budget, they'll be able to do so.
Thank you, and I appreciate the flex on that. One point I would make right now, why we have a relatively large audience, and I do really appreciate the one thing about this, about the Zoom space, has been we've gone from 2 people showing up. The budget is posted online on the website. There's access to this to review. Every year that we vote on the budget, when December comes, people come and say, you didn't have it, it wasn't public, I didn't know about it. I just want to be perfectly clear and transparent that everyone has the opportunity to review the budget prior to public comment. So, you know, all of you who are listening now, please take advantage of that and tell your neighbors, so that when we do get to the point of actually voting on the budget, we don't have people showing up saying, hey, I didn't know. You know, we can do a swift reach or call out so people know that it's available as well. But I do want to make sure that everyone has access to the budget and what it looks like. You know, infrastructure remains our giant cost that we, you know, roads and sewer. I've heard from, you know, the vice president and Councilmember Collins regularly on the day that the pump station blows up. I understand the need and requirements. So budget is there. Please feel free to review it. Give us your comments if you think we're missing something, should have something. We are here for that purpose. Any comments from everybody else on that? Just wanted to put that out for everyone.
Yeah, I just want to thank them for the new format. It is easy to read. It is lovely. I'm thrilled with it. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I actually fully agree with that point, by the way. Like, really digestible. Any other comments? Okay, before I go to council announcements, I do want to give opportunity for public comment outside of the public hearing. So, and what will be my wife divorcing me by the time this meeting is over. If anyone has a public comment that they would like that was not related to the public hearing, now is your opportunity to do so. Raise your hand, state your name and address, and what you'd like to comment. If not, we will move forward and possibly find our way to dinner. You are all too kind. Having said that, I appreciate it. Any staff reports or information people would like to supply off council before we adjourn? Anything people need to comment on? Outstanding. Obviously, it's been a long meeting. I appreciate everybody's time today. We have next week, same time, same bat channel. Outside of that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Oops, sorry.
No, that is the proper enthusiasm. Don, today you win the day. I'm 100% with you, man. All right, that's it. Thank everybody for attending. Am I missing anything? I look to the solicitor. He doesn't say I've done anything wrong. We're out. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Take care.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Night, everybody.
Good night, Dennis. Thanks for the ride.
Yep, thank you.
It was long today. Reminds me of the old days. Hey, Gavin, you remember the old days? The 10 o'clock finishes?
Those were the dark times.
They were indeed. So even with the public hearing, at least we complete by 9:30. A lot of work to do, but I appreciate everybody's comment. All right, I'm out. Have a good night, people.
See you, everybody.
All right.